In this video, I'm going to show you how to build an AI voice assistant that you can call or connect to directly from your browser. Here, check this out. I'm going to call my assistant right now. Let's dial the number, put it on speakerphone, and wait for it to reply.
Hey, Tim. I'm calling from DevLaunch. You requested a call to start the application process.
And you guys get the idea. We could go through the entire call, which I will do later on. But in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to set that up. And here's the process we're going to go through. At the start of the video, I'm going to show you how to do all of this without writing a single line of code. You can actually get this agent, connect it to a phone number, and have it fully ready to go without having any coding skills. And then for those of you that are developers, I'm going to show you how you can integrate this into your own custom front end. So you can press a single button and then it will actually just trigger the voice assistant to run, and you can talk to it through your browser rather than having to pick up the phone. We're going to do that using React and JavaScript for the front end. Then I'm going to show you how we can actually connect to the voice assistant from a backend server, or at least send some requests and control it. And this is going to give you kind of a full in-depth guide on everything you would need to set this up and use it in a production application. Now, the best part of all of this is that it's completely free. You're going to get some credits with the link that I have in the description. And the tool that we're going to be using to build all of this is called VAPI, which stands for Voice API. Now, I've left a link to it in the description where you can get $10 in free credit when you sign up. You don't need any credit card information or anything like that. You can immediately start playing with it. And I want to give a massive thank you to VAPI for sponsoring this video. Let's go ahead and get started, and let me show you a demo of this project and exactly what we're going to build. Okay, so I'm on the VAPI dashboard here, and I'll just quickly walk you through how this works. And then I want to show you the agent in action so you can see exactly what it's doing in the use case we're solving. Now, truthfully, you can use this for pretty much anything, and it's relatively easy to get set up, but I am going to attach this to a real world use case here so you can see how you would actually use this in the real world. Anyways, you'll notice that I have a bunch of parameters here in the dashboard. It's telling me things like the cost of the voice assistant, the latency that I'm going to have, and it kind of breaks that down, which is quite nice. And then it gives me information about the model. So for this, you can use really any model you want. You can use any scale, you can use DeepSeek, you can use OpenAI, right? Like there's a bunch of different options, and then you can choose the individual model from that provider. And then of course you can give a detailed prompt. Now, this is really just kind of surface level. So you can specify the message. So, hello, first name, I'm calling from whatever, and then a big prompt that kind of specifies what you want the model to do. Now, beyond that, there's a lot of other configurations that we'll go through, but the way that I've set this up and what I've built for kind of this video here is this simple front end. Now, the idea is I actually have my own program. It's a mentorship program. You guys may have heard of it. The point of this video is not to promote it, but just to kind of attach it to reality because it's something I actually use. And in this program, if you want to apply to it, because we only select some people, you go through this form, right? And the form just requires you to fill in all of these details, and you can keep going. If I were to fill this in, and it would ask you things like, are you a beginner programmer? Are you willing to invest in the program? Are you able to start now? Like there's a bunch of questions if you go through this form, okay? And a lot of people don't want to actually just sit here and type them. They'd rather speak it out loud or talk directly to a person. So rather than having a real person, we can set up a voice assistant where it can essentially automate all of that information and collect the data for us. And it can be a bit more dynamic and maybe get information that the form doesn't handle like kind of automatically here. So what I did is I set up this very simple landing page. I'm not going to focus on the styling here. The point is just to kind of get the functionality out of the way. And I'll fill in the details here. So we go, Tim, my last name. We can put in a phone number and an email. And if I go to start call, what's going to happen is it's going to connect to my agent or my voice assistant, and I can just start talking to it directly in the browser.
Hey, Tim. I'm calling from DevLaunch. You requested a call to start the application process. Are you ready to start?
Yes, let's get started.
Great. I'm here to help you see if the DevLaunch private mentorship program is a good fit for you. This will just take a few minutes, and at the end, I'll let you know the next steps. Sound good?
Yep, let's go.
Awesome. To get started, can I ask how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 24.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that. And which country are you currently living in?
I live in the UAE, but I'm originally from Canada.
Got it. Thanks for letting me know. Now, to make sure this is the right fit, can you share your approximate monthly income in USD?
Yeah,
you can just choose a range.
US dollars a month.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Just so you know, the mentorship is a paid program designed to help you level up fast. Are you open to investing between $2,000 to $4,000 USD to get started and reach your goals in 2025?
Yes, that sounds good to me.
Fantastic. Where are you in your coding journey? Do you already have strong coding skills or a degree, or do you still need help with the foundations?
I have strong coding skills. I'm pretty experienced.
That's excellent to hear. If you were accepted, would you be ready to get started right away, or would you need some time to prepare?
Yeah, I'd be ready to get started.
Awesome. And lastly, is there anything else you'd like to share about why you think you'd be a great fit for this mentorship? I'd love to hear about your goals or what you're hoping to achieve.
No, that's it.
All right. Thanks for sharing all that. Based on what you've shared, it sounds like you could be a great fit for the program. The next step is to set up a call where we'll go over the details and answer any questions you have. You'll see the web page update.
Okay, so I'm just going to end the call there. And while I do that, what's going to happen is it's going to start loading an end of call report, which is going to contain a summary and also tell us whether we're qualified or not. Now it takes a second, it will pop up on screen right now, and you can see that it specifies that yes, I am actually qualified for the program, so we can then use that variable to determine where to redirect the user to next. So for example, we could bring them to an appointment setting page, we could redirect them to a downsell maybe if they weren't qualified, and you get the idea. And then it gives us a summary of all of the stuff that happened inside of the call, and we can adjust all of this and really pull out the information that's useful to us. So I'm on the Voppy website here, and this is where we'll go ahead and get started. Now you can click the link down below and you should be able to just to make a new account. Again, it's for free. You don't need to enter any credit card information or anything. And then you'll be able to go to your dashboard. So where we want to go right away is our dashboard. I'm already signed in. I've already made an account. So it's going to bring me here, and this is where I can make a new voice assistant. So from here, you can just go to assistants, and then you can just press on create new assistant. So let me make this a little bit bigger, and let's go ahead and do that. Now from create assistant, we're just going to give this a name. And again, we'll have an assistant up and running in literally just a few minutes, and we can do it all from the web interface. So I'm just going to call this tutorial because, well, that's what we're doing right now. But you can call this anything that you want. And if you want to have a template, you can see that there's some here, right? Custom support, game NPC, inbound Q&A, etc. We're just going to go with blank template for right now, and then go with create assistant. Okay, so it's going to take a second to spin up, and from here already, we just have an assistant that we could start interacting with. So if you wanted to test this, you could just press with talk assistant up here, or you can connect a phone number to the assistant, which we're going to do later on. But what we want to do is we want to start filling in things like our model information, and we can go through, and there's all these different parameters that we can set up. So I'm going to start doing that right now. So for our model, I am going to go with OpenAI for the provider, and the best experience I've had so far is going with the 4.0 or just the GPT-4 Turbo cluster. So you can pick what you want, and it shows you the price as well as the latency. So I'm going to go with the 4.0 cluster. You can attach a knowledge base. We're not going to do that right now. And for the temperature, I'm just going to go down to 0.3 because I find that performs a little bit better. Now, if you want to have a more responsive agent that's detecting the emotion, you can check this right here, which is something that I'll do. Now we'll fill in the prompt details in just 1 second, but for now, let's go through some more settings and just make sure everything's configured. So if we go to transcriber, we can mess with these if we want, but I'm just going to leave them as the default. And this is how we transcribe the text that's coming from the agent as well as from our voice. Now I'm going to go and just check this background denoising so that if there is background noise when someone's calling us, we'll try to remove that first. And you'll see that when I do that, it doesn't actually change the cost or the latency. Okay, so next we'll move to voice. Now you have a lot of options here. I've messed around, and if you want the exact voice that I had there, you can go to 11 Labs, and then I actually forget the name of the guy. I think I was using Nigel. So let me scroll down, or actually I can just search for Nigel here, and there we go. Nigel's the one that I'm using, but you can add a manual voice ID if you create your own, or you can just scroll through the huge list of voices they have. And of course, there's a lot of other providers here. And then we can go down to additional configuration. And again, we can mess with all of the advanced techniques here, but I don't really need to change anything as of now. And you can see here that we have even more options, and we can, for example, add various tools or add custom coded functions that our agent will have the ability to interact with. Now, I'm not going to do that in this video, but if you want, you can make a new tool, and you can have tools that connect to, for example, Go High Level if you have some kind of sales funnel there, or things like make.com, or again, you can write your own custom tool in a programming language that it can then be called with. You can also enable the end call function. So if you want the agent to be able to end the call for itself or by itself, then you can check this. I'm not going to add that because I'd rather the user just specify when they want to end the call. But if you want to be careful with cost and you want to maybe put in the prompt when the call should end, then you can check this, and then the agent can just go ahead and end the call whenever it sees fit. Okay, next we have some advanced settings. Now there's a bunch of stuff here. We're gonna leave audio recording so this way we can listen back to it later on. And then what I'm gonna do is check the smart endpointing. Now when we do that, it's just gonna automatically try to get the most accurate speech detection it can and figure out when the user stopped talking so that we don't need to deal with all of those various settings that were there before. So that's pretty much it. If you scroll down further, you will see there is a messaging section. Now this is where you can do some more advanced configurations for things like webhooks and receiving information about the call. So for example, if you had a backend server set up, you can have that server actually get all of the information like analysis about the call, end of call report, when it was hung up on, like you could check all of the information that you want to be received there. And then same thing with the client, you can get all of this information on the front end, right? So backend and front end will get different types of information and you can set the kind of webhook endpoint URL that you want this information to be sent to, as well as some other details down here. Now look, you guys can read through all of that. I'm not going to go through every single setting, but that's kind of the gist. And then lastly, we have analysis. Now for the analysis, this is actually very cool and it allows you to tell the model what you want it to do when the call ends and to get things like a summary. So we can get a summary of the call based on a prompt that we specify here. We can also determine if the call was successful or not based on some evaluation technique that we put here. And then lastly, and this is the coolest one in my opinion, we can get the model to output structured data. So if we want to have, for example, some kind of JSON schema that's given to us and we maybe grab specific information from the call and we want to send that to our backend or use it later on, we can do that. In our case, that's super important because the outcome for us is we want to know if the user is qualified for the dev launch program or not. So we can have a structured schema here and then the model can fill in all that information and tell us all of the answers that the user had to the various questions. This will make more sense later on, but I'm just going through some of the high level settings. So for now, I'm just going to press on publish. I haven't really done anything other than change the voice, and we just want to make sure this is working. So I'm just going to press on talk with assistant.
Hello. I'm just a computer program, so I don't have feelings, but I'm here and ready to help you. How can I assist you today?
Okay, so you're funny. I see that.
I'm glad you think so. Humor can be a bit tricky for me, but I try my best. Is there anything specific?
Okay, so I'm just going to end the call there. The reason why I didn't say something initially is because we didn't specify a first message, but if we do that, then it would respond to us with that first message. So now that we've kind of tested this and we know that it's working with the settings that we've changed, what I want to do is start adding in the prompts. Now this is where obviously you're going to change the prompt based on your specific use case, but for me, I've already written some of the prompts, so I'm just going to copy them in here to save us a little bit of time. Now I'm going to imagine for you guys that you'll adjust the prompts, but feel free to copy these if you want. Now, if you want to embed something like a variable inside of here, you can do that by doing 2 sets of braces. And I'll show you later on from how code, we kind of send those variables into the model so that it gets filled in. Because right now, if we just test it from this front end, where we don't have the ability to specify what these variables should be, but it's fine to use them. And then again, later we can kind of fill those in. So for the first message, I'm going to say, hey, I'm calling from dev launch. You requested a call to start the application process. Are you ready to start? And again, not all of this is perfect. I didn't spend too much time on it. And later on, we can tweak the prompt as much as we want. So I'm then going to paste in this big prompt. And pretty much what this will do is just guide the model or the assistant on what it should be doing. So I have, for example, guidelines like make sure you keep it warm and professional. You don't want to be like a salesperson, keep it brief, conversational, etc. And then it goes through the flow of the questions that I do need to ask the user. So these are the same questions that you would be asked if you were to apply for my mentorship program. And again, it's just to make sure that you're a good fit because obviously, we don't want to waste anybody's time if someone's not going to be qualified and they're not going to be able to get help from the program. So then what I have at the end is the following. I say a customer is qualified if, they meet this criteria, they're from a certain location, they have a certain amount of income, they have programming experience already. And then if they're qualified, we're going to say this. If they're not qualified, we're going to say this. And then to end the call, just ask them if they have any questions, and then they can just press end whenever they're finished, right? So there you go. That kind of sets up the prompt. And then if we wanted to test that, we could just press on publish. Make sure you do press this button here just to save those changes. And then we could talk with the assistant. Now, I already know that this is going to work because I've used it before. So what I want to do is go into some more details and I want to get into the analysis section. Now, the analysis section is, again, to me, probably the most valuable part of this because it allows you to get the insights out of the call that you actually need. In our case, the whole purpose of this call or filling out the form, if you were to do that from my website, is to see if someone's qualified. If they're qualified, we want to allow them to book a call. If they're not qualified, we want to redirect them to maybe something that's more suitable, maybe like a low ticket course or maybe a free YouTube video or some free resource, right? So what I'm going to do here is just fill in some details. For the summary, we can just do, write a brief summary of the call. And if there was something specific that you did want to be summarized, then obviously you could just put it here. For me, it doesn't really matter. And then you can also set the timeout here for the summary, because it will take a few seconds after the call finishes to generate this, because we are doing an LLM invocation. Okay, for success evaluation, I don't really care about this part because it's not really if the call is successful or not. That's not what we're trying to get out of this. What we care most about is the structured data. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy in a prompt that I have here. Okay, so give me 1 second and then you'll be able to read what this says. So it says, you are given a call transcription of a meeting with a potential customer evaluating their eligibility. This is how you determine if they're eligible or not. And then your task is to summarize the call, output the data in the provided schema, and ensure the summary is concise, etc. Okay, so that's what we have. And then the important part is that I can start specifying the schema of data that I want to be outputted here. So all of the fields that I would want to have in code and always know that are existing, I can put here and I can write them all out and really define what the schema should be. So I don't want to waste your time doing this. So just give me a second to fill in the schema and then I'll explain exactly what it is and why I've chosen these fields. Okay, so I just filled in the structured output schema here and I'll quickly walk you through it. So you can see that I have various fields. For example, is experienced coding. And then I have the type as a Boolean. So I want this to be true or false. And I can add a description for all of these fields to really specify what the model should be doing and how they should be filling it in. You can also mark them as mandatory or not. And then you can specify if you want something to be an enumeration. So I'm not going to go through all of them. You can see coding experience, extra details, ready to start, monthly income. And if we look at something like the monthly income, I've made this an enum. So when you do that, you'll have this little edit button and then you can specify the values you'd want it to select from. And actually, I'm going to say, not provided as another option here because it's possible someone doesn't want to share their income, which is totally fine. Okay, so moving back, you can see we have some other fields like country, age, is qualified, and then I also have an object. So you're only able to add 10 fields here. So if you want to have a lot more information, you can nest those inside of various objects. So what I did is I created an object, and if you look at it then within the object, you can specify the schema there. So at first name, last name, phone number, and email, and that's for those contact details. So that we're storing that in one nested object rather than taking up 4 different fields, which would put us over, the current limit of 10 fields that they have for this specific kind of structured output. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and press on publish. Now again, we can test this out. I'm going to go through one run of it just to make sure that it's giving us the correct structured output. So we'll look in the logs. And then once we have this, we'll link it to a phone number and then we can go to the coding component. And notice, again, in a few minutes, I was explaining a lot of this and taking some time. We were able to set up a pretty advanced voice assistant. So let's go with talk with agent and see what we get.
I'm calling from Dev Launch. You requested a call to start the application process. Are you ready to start?
Yes, I'm ready. Let's get started.
Great. I'm here to help you see if the Dev Launch private mentorship program is a good fit for you. This will just take a few minutes, and at the end, I'll let you know the next steps. Sound good?
Yes.
Perfect. To get started, can I ask how old you are?
I am 24.
Got it. And which country are you currently living in?
I live in Australia.
Awesome. And to make sure this is the right fit, can you share your approximate monthly income in USD? You can just choose a range.
I'm not comfortable with sharing my income.
That's completely okay. No worries at all. Just so you know, the mentorship is a paid program designed to help you level up fast. Are you open to investing between $2,000 to $4,000 USD to get started and reach your goals in 2025?
That's a little bit too much money for me.
I totally understand. It's a significant investment and it's important to feel comfortable with it. Let's keep going to see where you're at in your journey. Where are you in your coding journey? Do you already have strong coding skills?
I'm a complete beginner in programming.
Thanks for sharing that. Starting out is an exciting place to be, and there's so much to learn. The mentorship program is designed for those who already have a solid foundation in coding, so it might not be the best fit right now. That said, I'd love to help you get started on the right path. Would you like me to share some free resources or beginner-friendly programs to help you build those foundational skills?
No, it's okay. I'm done.
Got it. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me. If you ever have questions or need guidance in the future, feel free to reach out. Wishing you the best of luck on your programming journey. You're going to do great.
Okay, sweet. So I just ended the call there and you'll see this little logs button pops up. So I'm going to press on logs. All right, so I'm here in the logs and we can see the recording of the call. We can see the transcript of the call, and then we can go to analysis, which is the most interesting part, right? So you can see that it's now filled in this schema with country is qualified, extra details, monthly income, ready to start, contact details, coding experience, etc. Okay. And then it tells us, hey, we're not experienced in coding, we're not ready to start, and we're not qualified. So now that we know that information, we could use that however we see fit. And then it told us this was false. I guess it's just saying because they weren't qualified, well, it's false. It also gives us a summary that we could then read through. We can go and we can view all the messages. We can see the cost of the call. So that was 28 cents because of how long it was. And then, you can go and see all of the details related to the assistant. Okay, so now that's working. I want to show you how we can connect this to a phone number. So what we can do is go to phone numbers, and you can actually just create a phone number. So from here, yeah, you can get up to 10 phone numbers for free, and you just need to select the area code that you want to use for the phone number. Now, it says that these are only available for US and Canada, so you just need to pick an area code that's there. Now, I already have one created, so I'm not going to bother making another one, but obviously you could set one up here. So you can see that I have one, and what I did is I just called it main. You can name it anything that you want. This is the phone number that it generated, and then I picked the assistant that I want this to be connected to. So I can actually connect it to tutorial rather than dev launch now. And now that I've done that, I can literally just pick up my phone and I can call this phone number. Now I'm not on my camera right now, so you won't be able to see me doing this, but if I call the number, it should just respond as the assistant. So let me do this, and I'll just put my phone speaker in the microphone so you can hear it. Okay, so I just called the number right now. Let's give it a second to call. And
hey, I'm calling from Dev Launch. You requested a call to start the application process. Are you ready to start?
And there you go. Okay, so you can see that that works. Now you're also able to set up some other phone numbers here. So for example, a fallback phone number if this phone number were to fail. So it could go maybe to a real person, for example. And then you can set out outbound phone numbers as well. So again, you can go through all those details. I'm not going to set that up here. You also can configure the agent to call a phone number rather than being called. But I just wanted to show you it does indeed work, and it is very fast and again free to set this up, which I think is pretty incredible. Okay, so that's that. We now have our assistant, and the next step is to integrate this into our own front end. So let's go back into our code editor, let's start writing some code, and let's connect it to our assistant. All right, so let's open that up, VS Code, and actually, that reminds me, there's a quick document that I want to share with you, which is going to make all of this a little bit more clear. So this is essentially the architecture of what we're about to build. Now we're going to start with just the front end and obviously the AI assistant, and then later we can add the backend server. Now the basic idea is the following. Our user is going to visit some landing page, right? In this case, it's my training.techwithtim.net page. They then would press on apply now, and they'd be displayed a form and then a call option. So pretty much a button that says, hey, you can call to fill out this form. Then they're going to select call. Okay, when they select call, it's going to ask them for their phone number and their name, their email, whatever other information, They're going to enter that information, and then the front end here is going to inform them that a call is incoming. Now this call could be to their phone number, or it could just be on the web app. Then the AI assistant will initiate the call. So that's going to just trigger it to start happening on the front end. And then from there, the user would have to pick up the call. Now, if we're already on the front end, it will just automatically pick it up for them. Now, once they pick up the call, they're going to be communicating back and forth with the AI assistant. And what the AI is going to do is it's going to qualify them based on their responses. So it's going to ask them all of those questions. What's going to happen then is the front end is going to be able to display kind of a log of what happened on the call. So whether there was, what the summary was, or if they were qualified or if they weren't qualified. And then the AI assistant is going to determine whether the lead is qualified or not. And based on if it's qualified or not, we're going to redirect to the call page or redirect to some kind of downsell or other offer. Now, this is a very typical kind of sales funnel, and I've just laid this out in this swim lane or this flow chart, whatever you want to refer to it as, so you get an idea of the various different components. Now, after all of that happens, you notice that we have the backend server. Now, the backend server is just something that can talk directly with the AI assistant and can kind of control the AI assistant. It can trigger new phone calls to happen. It can view logs. It has kind of more permissions than you would have directly from the front end because it's on the back end, so it's more secure, right? So what we're able to do is once all of this is finished, we can actually just have a call report be sent to the backend server, and then the backend can get all of that information and we can do anything that we want with it. So again, we can see if we're qualified. If we're not qualified, we can maybe send the user an email. I'm not going to do too much on the back end in this video, but I want to show you how that communication works so that you understand how you could set that up for your own use case. And then lastly, let's say the user were to not pick up, you could have the agent leave a message. Now, we're not going to do that, but I'm just giving you an example of kind of what this would look like. And this is very similar to what we're going to build out in this video. So I hope that's a little bit helpful in terms of understanding kind of the flow of components. We have our front end, the user's interacting with that front end. At some point, we then trigger the AI assistant, and then we can use the backend server to kind of control the AI assistant and get some more information from it. So I'm in VS Code here, and we're going to start by just setting up a simple React project. Now I'm going to assume that you are familiar with a bit of React and JavaScript here. Don't worry, this isn't going to be super advanced. In fact, it will be very basic, but I'm not going to be explaining basic JavaScript code. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to set up a new Vite project. So I'm going to say npm create, and then this is going to be Vite at latest. Okay. Now, once I do that, it's going to ask me for a name for my project. So I'm just going to go ahead and call this front end, and I'm going to select React as my framework. Now let's just go with normal JavaScript. We don't need TypeScript for this project. Okay. Now that we have that, we're going to cd into our front end. We're going to type npm install to install our dependencies, and then we can run the front end server. Now we're also going to install the Vapi front end SDK. So if I go back here, you'll see that if I go to the documentation, there is a lot of docs. They're actually quite good, so you can reference these if you need to. And if I go to the documentation, you see that we'll have the ability to integrate this with the web. So you can see client SDKs, we have web SDK, and then it shows us right here that this is the command that we need to run in order to install the web SDK. In order to use it, it gives us all of the instructions right here on this page. It's very, very straightforward. There's just a few different functions that we need to call, and this is exactly what I followed in order to build out this project. Okay, so we're going to go back here. I'm just going to copy this command in. So we're going to install @vapi AI/web, wait for that to finish, and then we're going to start just setting up our front end project. Now at this point, I will mention that all of this code will be available from the link in the description. So in case you just want to copy anything, feel free to have a look at that. There'll be a GitHub repository that contains, again, all of this code. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into my front end directory, and I'm going to make a new file, which is called .env. Now this is just going to hold a few keys that we need in order to interact with Vapi. It's very straightforward, but we're just going to have one that's going to store our API key, and then one that's going to store the ID of the voice assistant, because we could interact with multiple assistants. So what I'm going to do is in all capitals here, I'm going to say Vite underscore Vapi or Vapi, however you want to say this, underscore API underscore key, and then that'll be equal to an empty string, which we'll fill in 1 second. And then next we're going to have Vite underscore, and this is going to be assistant underscore ID, same thing, an empty string that we'll fill in 1 second. And make sure that you start this with Vite, because you need it to start with Vite in order for it to be loaded into the project. Now we're going to go into SRC here. I'm just going to delete this assets folder because I don't need this React logo. I'm going to delete the app.css file because I don't need that. And I'm just going to clear out pretty much everything inside of my app.jsx file. So I'm going to go here and just delete that. I'm going to delete the state, and I'm going to delete all of the imports here. Actually, we can leave the useState import because we'll use that in 1 second. And we'll just leave it kind of as an empty component, so we're starting from a fresh slate. Okay, so we're almost ready to start writing some code. But what I do want to do is just grab the values in this env file. So let's go back to our dashboard so we can get those. So if you go to the Vapi dashboard, you can simply go down to where it shows your email or your name here, and you can go to API keys. When you go to API key, you'll see that you have a public and a private API key. Now the private API key gives you more access, and you can use this from your backend system to control Vapi via the API. Now the public one just gives you access to do things like start the voice assistant and interact and call with it, but it doesn't allow you to like modify as many things. You don't have as many permissions. So from the front end, you always want to be using this public key, which I'm going to copy here. And from a backend server, you can use this private key because obviously your backend is protected and not just anyone can mess around with it. Okay, so I'm going to go to the env file here, and I'm just going to paste in again that public key. We want the public key for the front end. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to get the assistant ID. Now the assistant we can find just by going to assistants, and then you can see the ID right here. So I'm going to go to tutorial and just copy the ID so we know which one we're running. Okay, so I'm going to come here and paste in the ID. Awesome. Now that we've done that, I'm going to make a new file inside of SRC. Now this is going to be ai.js. Call this whatever you want. And I'm just going to write some very simple code that shows you how to start the voice assistant and how to stop it. Obviously, that's the most fundamental. That's what most of you need to know how to do. And once you have this, most of the important logic's already finished. Obviously, I'm going to show you more stuff, but I just want to put it in its own separate file. So in order to do that, you can say import vapi from and then at vapi-ai/web. Then what we can do is say export const, and we can say vapi is equal to new, and we're going to have a new vapi instance. And then inside of here, what I want to do is say import .meta.env.vite underscore, and this is going to be the vapi underscore API underscore key. Okay, this is how you access an environment variable from, JavaScript or from React. You have to use import.meta.env. Whatever the name of the variable is, and it needs to start with vite. Okay, after that, we're going to say const assistant ID is equal to import, and then .meta.env.vite underscore, and then assistant underscore ID. And we should spell assistant correctly. Let's just make sure that's correct. I'm going to copy this and paste it here so we don't get any mistakes. Okay, after we've done that, I'm just going to write a very simple function, and this function will just start the assistant. Now to start the assistant, we can say export const and then start assistant, and this is going to be equal to an async function. And this async function is going to take in the values that we need to start the assistant. So we're going to take in a first name, a last name, an email, and a phone number. Okay, then we're going to have the function body, and let me just format this or make it a little bit smaller so you guys can read it. Okay, from here, we're going to say return await, and then vapi.start, and then we can just pass the assistant ID. Now we're going to pass some other values as well that allow us to customize the assistant, but for now we can just start it doing this. Okay, so this is all you would need to do to start the assistant. By default, this is going to open up the microphone in your web browser and allow you just to start talking to the assistant. Obviously, I'm going to show you how we can visualize the waveform, how we can have the start call, end call button, all of that kind of stuff, but this is the absolute basics when it comes to starting it. In terms of stopping it, we can say export const, and then we can say stop assistant. Okay, and all we have to do here is just say vapi, and you guessed it, .stop. That's literally it. That will then stop the AI voice assistant. Great. Now, in terms of customizing the assistant here, I told you that we want to be able to pass in the first name, last name, email, and phone. So what we can do is we can make an object here, and we can call this assistant and then overrides. Now this allows us to override pretty much any parameter in the AI voice assistant, so we can customize it as we call it from the front end. So we can pass in, for example, different variables and provide different context to the model. So what I can do is I can say variable, and then this is going to be values, and then we can just pass in all of our values. So first name, last name, email, and phone. Okay, and then we can pass that as the second parameter here, or second argument, sorry, to our vapi.start. So I can say assistant overrides. So now when we call this, we'll pass these variables, and then the AI voice assistant should greet us by our first name. It also means that all of this information we can then have in the analysis section after the assistant has ran. If you're curious about some other things that you can do, if you go back to the documentation here, so from this page, you see that we have the option, of course, to just start an assistant that we already have. So we created one here, and we use the assistant ID. But you also have the ability to create a new assistant by passing in all of the information about that assistant. So rather than having it all pre-configured in the dashboard, you could actually configure it from code by passing a massive JSON object here, rather than passing the assistant ID. Now we're not doing that here, but it is something that you could do. So I just wanted to mention that. Now beyond that, you can also override configurations. So in this case, you can see this is exactly what we just did. We created this assistant overrides, and we just passed a few variable names, but you can pass, for example, if you want to record the call, if you want to change the transcriber, any other parameters you can modify here. And then additionally, later on, you can send things like background messages to the assistant. So for example, maybe the user presses a button or changes some setting, you could actually take that context and give that to the model in the background by just sending something to it. There's a lot of other stuff that you can do here, but you guys get the idea. And then we have all these event listeners, which I'm going to show you in 1 second. So you can see when the speech has started, when the speech has ended, when the call is ended, if the volume level is being adjusted, etc., etc. Okay, so let's go back here, and I just want to kind of quickly test this out. So I'm going to go into app.jsx, and I'm going to import the few pieces of code that we wrote here. So I'm going to say import Voppy, and then start assistant, and what did I call it? Stop assistant from dot slash, and then AI. Now let's just make sure those are correct. Start, stop. Okay, perfect. Now I'm just going to import use effect as well. And just to test this out initially, I'm just going to render a use effect hook. So I'm going to say use effect. Let's have a function here. Okay, if we can type this correctly, we'll have an empty dependency array. And I'm just going to begin by literally just calling start assistant. So right when the app starts, we're just going to immediately start the assistant just to make sure that this is working. All right, so let's go ahead and test this. I'm going to go to my front end, and I'm going to type npm run dev. Now that's going to run the application. I'm going to open up this on localhost, and let's see if it works.
I'm calling from dev launch. You requested a call to start the application process. Are you ready to start?
Yes, let's go.
Great. I'm here to help you see if...
So you can see that's working. I'm just going to close that because we didn't add the ability to close it right now. So it's just going to keep going forever. But you guys get the idea. As soon as we kind of went to that web page, it immediately started. Perfect. So now that we know that that's working, I'm going to remove the use effect, and I want to start writing a basic user interface for interacting with this agent. Now, the idea is that I want the user to enter some details like their first name, last name, phone number, etc. And then once they do that, I'll give them the ability to start the call, where we'll then start the call and then we can get the information back from it. Now, I don't want to waste a ton of time just writing a bunch of styling, so I've already written all of the styling for this video or for this project, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in index.css. Now, like I mentioned, if you want all of the styling and this exact code, you can simply click that link in the description, the GitHub link, it's free, and you can just look in the index.css file, copy that, and paste it inside of your project, okay? So it just contains all of the classes and the styling already, so we don't need to waste time doing that. Perfect. So now we're going to go to app.css or app.jsx, sorry, and I'm going to copy in some state that we're going to need to use. Now it's going to seem like a lot, but I just don't want to waste time again writing a bunch of stuff that we can just pause the video and write out together, or you can copy from the GitHub. So you can see I have state related to if the assistant has started, if it's loading, if the assistant is speaking, the current volume level of the assistant, the ID of the call, which we'll use later on to retrieve some results about it, which we're storing here, and then if we're currently loading a result. And then we have information or state for our form, so first name, last name, phone number, email. We could make this more clean, but the purpose of this is not to teach you React, it's to show you how to use this framework and this AI voice assistant. And by the way, you can use this in various other frameworks as well. It doesn't need to be React. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a use effect hook, and this use effect hook is going to use some of those event listeners that you saw to trigger different state, kind of based on what's happening with the agent. So what I can say is voppy.on, and then I can specify a lot of these different, events that can happen. So first we're going to say call start, and then we're going to have a function that will be triggered when the call starts. Now, when the call is starting, we're going to say set loading to false and set started to true. Okay, then we can just chain all of these on events after one of another. So I'm going to have, okay, when the call ends, well, we want to do something for that. So when the call ends, we're going to say set started is equal to false. And we'll just say set loading equal to false as well, just to ensure that it is false so we don't get some kind of infinite loading loop. We're then going to have another on, and we're going to say on speech start. Now, speech start is something that's going to happen multiple times every time the agent or assistant starts speaking. So we'll say a sentence. As soon as it starts talking, the speech start will be triggered. And for every time it begins speaking, this will be triggered, okay? So this is different than the call starting. It's when the agent is talking within the call. So from here, we're going to say set, assistant is speaking to true. We're then going to have .on, and then you got it, speech end. And then you can probably guess what we're going to do here. We're going to say set assistant is speaking, and then false. And then lastly, we're going to handle the on volume. So we're going to say .on, and we're going to say volume level. we're going to take in the level. And then from here, we're going to say set volume level, and we're going to use this to kind of map out the waveform of the agent speaking so we get some dynamic output on the screen. Now, those are all of the events that I want to handle, but I will show you that if you wanted to see all of the messages that were occurring, you could do .on and then message, and then you can take as a parameter message. And if you log message, you'll see that this gives you the current transcript. So if you wanted to, for example, have the live call transcription showing on screen, you could do that from this event handler. I'm not going to do that in this video, but you could, and I just wanted to show that to you quickly. Okay, so now we have all of our event handlers, which will handle our various state. We have a lot of our state, and we need to start actually rendering out some of our various components. So what I'm going to do is start writing a basic form. So we're going to begin with a div. So we're going to have div and /div. The class name of this is going to be the app container. And all of these class names will map up with the styles that I have in index.css. Now we're going to begin by just having a basic fragment, and we're going to add some state to this. So we're going to say show form and this. Now this pretty much just says, and we need the braces as well, we're only going to show this fragment, which is going to contain a form, and the form will be like enter the contact details essentially, if we're showing the form. And the show form variable is something that I'm going to write up here. So we're going to say const show form is equal to true. In a second, we'll actually write what the real value is, but let's just imagine for now that this will always be true. Okay, so if we're showing the form, then we want to render all of this. So I'm just going to have an h1, and I'm just going to say contact details, okay? And we'll just do like required or something so they know that they need to fill this in. And then we're going to have a set of inputs. Now for the inputs, these can actually be a self-enclosed tag, and we can say type is equal to text. We can say placeholder is equal to first name. We can say the value is equal to first name. And then we can say the class name is equal to the input field. Now let's close that and format. Okay, and then we're going to have an on change. And we're going to say on change is equal to a function we're going to write in 1 second, which is handle input change, and then set first name. Okay, let's write that function really quickly. So we're going to say const handle input change. Okay, we're going to take in the set function here. Just give me 1 second. So we're going to say setter. And then we're actually going to have another function. This is going to say event. Okay, and we're going to do the following. We're going to say setter and then event dot target dot value. Now, all this is going to do is just set whatever this piece of state is for us, so we don't need to keep writing all of this every time. We can just use the handle input change function. Okay, so now we have our first input. We're just going to copy this, and we will just adjust this for our last name. So we'll just say last name, change this to say last name, and then same thing, change this to be last name. Then we will paste this again, and we will change it to be our email. So we're going to say email address. Okay, we're going to say email, and then set email. And then lastly, we will do the phone number. So let's go here. Okay, for the text this time, we can actually just put tell. And for the type, sorry, up here, I mean type, not text, this will be email. So we have type email and then type telephone. And then for this is going to be phone number. Okay, and then this is going to be phone number. And then this is going to be set phone number. Okay, let me format the document. And now we have our form, and I will zoom out so we can read it. Okay, so basic form. Now inside of the form, we also just need to have a button. So for the button, we're going to do the following. We're going to say if we have not yet started the assistant, then we're going to display a button. For the button, we're going to have an on-click handler. And the on-click will simply call a function called handle start, which we'll write in 1 second. We're going to say disabled is equal to, and we're going to say all fields filled, which is a variable that we're going to write in 1 second. And then we're going to add our class name equal to button. And for the text inside of the button, we're going to say start call. Okay, and we can maybe say start application call or something so that it makes a little bit more sense. Okay, so let's fill in the all fields filled variable. So for that, we can say const all fields filled is equal to, and then this is going to be first name and last name and email. Okay. And let's do this, phone number. Perfect. And then let's format, and let's take our variables here and write them together. Okay. So that should be the form. We can now test this form out and just make sure that it's working before we move any further. So let's rerun our front end and let's open it up. And let's see if we get a form. I'm going to go inspect console, and it looks like there's an error saying handle start is not defined. Okay, so let's write the handle start function quickly just to fix that error. So we can go const handle start, and we can just make this an empty function for right now. And if we go back here, so let's open up the correct one and refresh, you see that we get the contact detail form. Perfect, so that looks good to me. We can now enter that information, and then we would be able to start the call. Okay, sweet. And actually, let's test out some logic here while we're here. I just want to enter some details. So Tim, Rasika. Okay, let's enter a random value, and then you can see that we can press on the button, start application call. Cool. All right, so all of that is working. Now, of course, we need to fill in some of these details, and we need to actually, well, handle the call and display some information about the voice assistant. So let's start by writing the handle start function. In handle start, we're going to say set loading is equal to true, and we're going to say const data is equal to await, and then this is going to be start assistant, which means this needs to be an async function. Now we're going to await the start assistant, and we're going to pass to this the first name, last name, email, and phone number, okay, as this function requires. Perfect. Then we're going to say set call ID, and this is going to be data.id. Now, as soon as the call is started, it's going to return to you a bunch of information about the voice assistant. And what we care about is the specific ID of the call, so that later we can go and look at some information about the call once it's done that kind of post-call analysis, and we can view that and display that on the screen. Okay, so that's handle start. Now let's do handle stop. Okay, so a handle stop is going to be very straightforward. All we're going to do is call the stop assistant function. And then we're going to do something else. We're going to get the call details. We'll wait for later. We want to test some things before we do that. All right, so we are almost finished. I'm just going to fill in a few more things. So for this show form, there's just going to be a few pieces of state that we want to check if we're displaying the form. So we're going to say if we're not loading, and we have not yet started the assistant, and we have not loaded the result, and we do not have any call result to display. Now the idea here is that when I'm loading, I don't want to show the form, I just want to show a loading indicator. And if the voice assistant is currently running, I want to show something different. I don't want to show the form, okay? I only want to show the form at the beginning. And then after the call finishes, again, I don't want to show the form, I want to show the result of the call, which again, we're going to do in 1 second. Okay. Then we're just going to quickly add in a loading indicator here at the bottom of the page. So outside of this show form, we're going to have a quick thing here that says if we are loading or we are loading the result, then we want to display the following. And what we're going to display is just simply a loading indicator. And I've already written the styles for it, so we'll get kind of a nice orange loading indicator. So I'm going to say div. I'm going to end my div. I'm going to say class name is equal to, and then this is going to be loading, and then the CSS will take care of that for us. And then beneath here, we are going to show some components related to visualizing the call, but that's just going to be done in 1 second. Okay, so I believe this is still running. So if we go back to our front end, we can refresh. We can fill in the details here. So let's go through them like that and go start application call, and let's see if this triggers. Okay, so it's loading. We'll wait for that to finish loading, and then it should start the call.
Hey Tim, I'm calling from Dev Launch. You requested a call to start the application process. Are you ready to start?
Yes, I am.
Great. I'm here to help you see if the Dev Launch private mentorship program is a good fit for you. This will just take a few minutes, and at the end, I'll let you know the next steps. Sound good?
Yes.
Awesome. To get started, can I ask how old you are?
I am 24.
Got it. And which country are you currently living in?
So that's working. I'm not going to go through that anymore because, well, it's working and it's fine. And now, what will I do? I'm going to go back here to VS Code and continue with the rest of this. All right, so obviously at this point, we need something that allows us to end the call. Right now, we don't have any kind of button for that, and we also don't have any visualization of what the call is actually doing, so it's very difficult for us to kind of see what's going on. So that's where I want to start using these pieces of state, and I'm going to set up some other components that are just going to show things like the audio waveform and then give us the ability to end the call. So I'm going to make a new folder here just called call, and inside of here, I'm going to make 3 components. Don't worry, they won't be that long. So I'm going to make one called active call details.jsx. I'm going to make another one called assistant, and then this is going to be speech indicator.jsx. And then I'm going to make one more, which is volume level.jsx. So let's start with volume level because this will be pretty straightforward. I'm going to say const num bars is equal to 10. You can adjust this to as many bars as you want. I'm going to say const volume level, and this is going to be equal to a React component. We're just going to take in what the volume is. Let's zoom in a little bit here, and we're going to return a styled component. So we're going to have a div. We're going to say class name is equal to the volume dash level. We're going to have another div. We're going to say class name is equal to volume dash bars. And then we're going to have an array. We're going to say array dot from, and we're going to do the following. We're going to say length numbers, or num bars, not numbers, num bars. That's kind of funny. Then we're going to have a function. We're going to have underscore and then I, and then this is going to map out what we want to display. So we're going to say div. We're going to close our div, and this actually needs to be a return. And then for the div, we're going to say key is equal to I, and we're going to say class name is equal to, and then I'm going to put in backticks here, volume dash bar, and then we're going to have a variable. For the variable, I'm going to say I divided by the number of bars, and then this is going to be less than the volume, and let's make sure this is inside the backticks so that this works properly. Okay, less than the volume, question mark, active, otherwise we are going to have just an empty string. Okay, let me just save this, and I've made some mistake here, so let me see what the problem is. Okay, so I just fixed it. I just had the brace in the wrong place. Sorry, I know I've written a lot of stuff here and I didn't really explain it, but essentially all we're doing is we're creating an array from the number of bars that we have. So in this case, the length of the array will be 10. We're then generating 10 elements, and these are the bars in the array, which represent the volume level. So all I'm saying is, okay, for every single bar, we're just going to see if we should actually be filling it with green or not, or I guess in my case, I made it orange. So if we should be filling it up or not, and then we're just going to have volume bar as the class, and then either active or non-active. So if it's active, it will be filled in. If it's not active, it won't be filled in. And because the volume will keep changing, this component will give us this kind of dynamic volume view. Okay, so that's the volume level. After that, we're going to go to the assistant speech indicator. Now from here, we're going to make, again, a component, and we're going to say assistant speech indicator like so. And this is going to be equal to is speaking. So let's do this. Okay. From here, we're going to return, and we're going to have a div. We're going to say class name is equal to assistant dash speech dash editor. We're then going to have another div. We're going to say class name is equal to, and now we're going to have some backticks. Inside of here, we're going to say speech and then indicator. And then we're going to say, okay, as a variable, are we speaking? So if we are speaking, then we're going to say speaking, and I need to make this in single quotes, I believe. Actually, I don't think it'll matter. Single or double is fine. Otherwise, we're going to say not speaking. Okay, let's format that. Now inside of this div, we're going to have a p tag, or actually, sorry, this is going to be outside of the div. In a p tag, we're going to have class name is equal to speech status. And then we're going to have a variable, and we're going to say if we're speaking, then we're going to display the assistant speaking. Otherwise, we're going to say assistant not speaking. Okay, and let's just add the capitalization here so it looks a little bit nicer. All right, we are almost done. We have the active, or sorry, what is this? I need to fix the name of this. We have the volume level and the assistant speech indicator. Now we're just going to render both of those together with an end call button in the active call details. And I need to just fix this because it's spelled incorrectly. Okay, so let's go to active call details. For this, we're going to import the assistant. And that reminds me, actually, we need to export these now. So let's go export default volume level. And let's go here, export default assistant speech indicator. Let's go to active call details and let's import assistant speech indicator. And let's import the volume level. Okay, now let's make our component and let's say const active call details. Okay, this is going to take in a few parameters. The parameters that we need are the assistant is speaking. We need to know the volume level and the end callback or end callback. Okay, so we have those. Now that we have that, we're going to return a simple div. We're almost done, guys, here. We're going to say class name is equal to active call detail. We're going to have another div, and the class name is going to be equal to the call info. And then we're going to render our components. So the first thing we're going to render is the assistant speech indicator, and we're going to pass is speaking equal to assistant is speaking. We're then going to do the volume level, and we're going to say volume is equal to the volume level. And then outside of this div, we're just going to have the ability to end the call. So we're going to have a class name, and this is going to be end call button. And then we're going to have a button that says end call. And this is just going to have an on click. So we're going to say on click is equal to the end call callback. Okay, so now we can export this. So export default. Let's get rid of the quote, active call details. And now what we can do is go to app.jsx and we can use this component. So from app.jsx, we're going to say import active call details. And then we need to scroll all the way down and we're just going to say, if we have started the assistant, then we want to display this. So we're going to say started question mark. Actually, let me make sure that's correct. Yes. So started, actually not question mark, and then we're going to show the active call details and we're going to pass the values. So we're going to say assistant is speaking is equal to, what did I call this? Speaking, assistant is speaking. Then we're going to have the volume level equal to the volume level. Let's format so you guys can read this. And then we're going to say the end call callback is equal to handle stop. Okay, so that should be it for what we need to render. We will show some call details later on the screen, but this is pretty much it for the front end. Let's make sure that there's no errors here. Okay, I think we are good. Again, all of this code will be available from the GitHub down below. And now we can test this out. So let me fill in some details here. Okay, email, phone number. I'm just putting fake one so that we can start this. And let's see if it works.
Tim, I'm calling from Dev Launch. You requested a call to start the application process. Are you ready to start?
So you can see that there you go, and then I can press on end call, and when I press on end call, it brings me back to this page because now, well, we've ended the call. So there you go, that is mostly the UI, and now that pretty much completes the front end. I mean, that allows us to interact with the agent. However, the thing is, we don't really have the output of the agent, right? Like I want to get the information that we saw previously in the logs where it showed us that structured output where we were able to see, okay, are we qualified? Are we not qualified? What was the transcript of the call? So that's what I want to show you how to do now. We have the front end. We're able to see the waveform. We can talk with the AI assistant, and maybe this is sufficient if it's just like, customer support or something, and we want to answer some basic questions. But if we want to actually take an action and have the model give us some kind of meaningful output, that's where this step comes in, and where we're going to start working on the back end. So what we're going to do now, because the front end is pretty much finished, is we're going to make a backend server in Python. Now, to do that, I'm just going to make a simple folder called backend. and I'm going to make a few different files. Now, the purpose of this backend server is to get more detailed information and have more control over our voice assistant. Like I said, on our front end, anyone's able to use that, right? So anyone can interact with the agent, they can spin up a new agent, that's fine, or new assistant, sorry. But from our backend, we want to be able to access something like the logs, like the structured output, things that should probably be more secure that we don't want anyone just to be able to access. For example, we wouldn't want anyone on our front end to just be able to query any of the call logs and get all of the information about anybody's call, right? Because there could be some sensitive data. So that's where the backend comes in. And what we're going to do is we're going to have our front end send a request to our Python backend with the ID of the call that just occurred. And then the backend is going to query our VAPI API, or our voice API, is going to get information about that call log and then allow us to display it on the front end. So send it back to us. So you'll understand what I mean in 1 second, but for now I'm going to write a few files. So first I'm going to write a requirements.txt file, and I'm going to list out the different requirements that I need for this Python project. If you haven't written Python code, don't worry, this is going to be really basic. So I'm going to take in requests, I'm going to take in Flask, I'm going to take in python.env, and flask-cores, which will allow us to handle the cross-origin resource sharing issue that you sometimes get when you have a separate front end and a separate back end. Now from here, I'm going to make a main.py file, okay, and I'm going to make a .env file. Now in the .env file, I'm going to make one variable, and this is going to be VAPI underscore API underscore key, and here we're going to paste our backend API key. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to VAPI. So let me go back to the dashboard here, and I'm going to go to my profile, to API keys, and I'm going to get the backend key. Now I'm going to copy this private key, and this time I'm not going to show you me pasting it because I obviously don't want to give you my private key. So hang on, I'm going to paste it in here, and then we're going to continue with the next steps. So my API key is now safely inside of my .env file, and the next step is going to be to create a Python virtual environment to install our dependencies and run our Python code. So what I just did here is I opened up a new terminal instance in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to change directories back so that I'm now in, the root directory. So I just did cd ... which means go to the parent directory. So I'm no longer inside of front end. And I'm going to cd now into backend. Now that I'm inside of backend, what I'm going to do is make a new virtual environment. You don't have to do this, but I do recommend it because it isolates your dependencies. Now, if you weren't going to use a virtual environment, you could just type the following command, pip install -r requirements.txt, obviously assuming that you have Python and pip installed on your system. Now, if you don't have Python installed, you're going to need to install that. And if you're on Mac or Linux, you may need to use pip3 for the kind of Python 3 version of Python, because sometimes that's an issue that can run up on Mac and Linux. Anyways, if you do want to make the virtual environment, the command you're going to run first is python -m venv venv. This just means make a new venv, or new virtual environment, called venv or venv. Okay, so I'm going to hit enter. This is going to take a second to run, and then you should see a new directory get created. Now that this directory is created, we can activate this version of Python, this kind of separate environment. And the way that we do that on Windows is we type / the name of the environment, which is venv, /scripts/activate. Okay, so if you do that on Windows, you're going to see that it will activate, and you'll see venv popping up as a prefix in your terminal. If you're on Mac or Linux, the command is different. It's going to be source /venv/bin/activate. Okay. If you're on Mac or Linux, this command will activate the virtual environment. The one that I used is for Windows. Unfortunately, they're different commands. Kind of annoying, but that just is how it is. Now that the virtual environment is activated, we can install our dependencies with pip install -r and then requirements.txt. Now, when you install these dependencies, they'll be inside of the virtual environment. So you need to remember, if you maybe turn your computer off and turn it back on and you want to run this project, you need to reactivate the Python virtual environment. Okay. So now what we're going to do is start writing some code for our backend. This is very, very basic, and you can find all of this information directly from the documentation. So if you go here to the VAPI docs and you go to server SDKs, there actually is an SDK directly for Python, but I'm not going to use that because I just want to show you how you do this from any language. You can see again, there's SDKs for a lot of different languages. I'm just directly using the API. So if you go to API reference, you can see that there's all these different kind of things that you can do with the API: update a call, delete call data, get call, and this is what we want. We want to get a call. So we want to get information about a call based on that call ID. And you can see that this is all the type of information that it will give us. It will give us created at, the cost, the messages, the phone call provider. And if you scroll all the way down, we get analysis where we have the structured data, successful evaluation, and the summary. And that's what we really want. We want this information right here. Okay, so in order to do this, we're going to go to Python, and we're going to set up a simple function that can essentially call the API and get that information. So we're going to say import OS, import requests. Okay, we're going to say from .env import load.env, and then we're going to call load.env. Now, what this does right here is it just loads the environment variable file for us, so we have access to that in our Python code. Okay. Next, we're going to create a function. So we're going to say define, and this is going to be fetch underscore call underscore details. And we're just going to take in a call ID. Okay. Then we're going to say our URL is equal to a Python f string. And we're going to say https://api.vapi.ai/call, and then slash, and then we're just going to embed the call ID. Okay, so this is just the URL that we want to send a GET request to. We're then going to say headers is equal to a Python dictionary. We're going to say authorization. So let's go like this. And then this is going to be F and then bearer. Okay, and then what we're going to have to do here is embed our tokens. So we're going to say os.getEnv and then vapi underscore API underscore key, and make sure this is in single quotes, not double quotes, because if you have double quotes for the F string and then you have double quotes inside, you'll get an error. So we need to use a different set of quotes for the embedded string. So what I'm doing here is I'm setting up my authorization header so that when I send a request to this URL, which is the API for Vapi, that I'm able to actually access this call ID, which is a part of my account. Now I'm getting the API token or the API key from my environment variable file, so it's defined inside of there. We pass it with bearer. You don't need to worry too much about this, but it's just a prefix, and there needs to be a space in between here as well. And then we have the headers, and we can now send the request. So I can say response is equal to request.get, and then I can get the URL, and I can say headers is equal to headers. Okay, so this will now pass the authorization header. When I say .get, it just means send a request to this URL. And then I can return my response, okay, .json. Perfect. So that is now going to send the request for me. And if I wanted to test that out, I could just fetch the call details. Now I would need to pass a call ID. So if you knew what the call ID was, or maybe you printed it out in the front end, you could just try this Python code and you would see that this would work. It would send a request and it would give you information about the call. But what I want to do is I want to allow my front end to use this backend function. So the idea is, right, after the call finishes, my front end needs to get information about this call. So what I want it to do is send a request to my backend. My backend then sends a request to my AI assistant, or to Vapi in this case, where we then get the logs, and then the backend takes those logs and sends the important information back to the front end. So it's acting like a proxy server that takes the request from the front end, sends it to Vapi, gets the details, and then sends it back to the front end. And that's the way that we do it securely, because we don't want to expose the backend token on our front end, so we need to wrap it in this simple Python code. Okay, now what we have to do here is we now need to make it essentially a server in our Python backend. We can do this really simply using Flask so that we can accept a request from the front end, and then once we have the front end request, again, we can send this request. So what I'm going to do at the top of my program is I'm going to say app is equal to Flask, and then underscore underscore name underscore underscore. And I need to import Flask. So to do that, I'm going to say from Flask import, and we're going to import Flask. We're going to import JSONify, and we're going to import this request variable. And while we're here, we're going to say from Flask underscore cores imports in all capital CORS or cores. Okay, and then I'm simply going to say cores, and then I'm going to wrap my app in cores. Now what this is going to do is just make sure that we're able to send requests to this backend from any front end that we write. That's it. I don't want to get into too many details, but if you don't have this, you'll get some errors when you try to send a request from your front end to your back end. Okay, last thing we need to do is make a simple get endpoint now that we can hit from our front end. So we're going to say @app.route, and we're going to say /call details, and then we're going to say methods is equal to get, and then we're going to say define get underscore call underscore details. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to look for the call ID. So the idea is when you call this endpoint, we're going to expect that you pass a query parameter, which is something that comes after this question mark, what is call ID. So like, call ID is equal to whatever the ID is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for that. So I'm going to say call underscore ID is equal to request.args.get, and then I'm going to get call underscore ID. I'm going to say if we don't have a call ID, so if not call ID, then I'm going to return JSONify, and I'm going to pass an error. So I'm going to say error, and then I'm going to say call ID is required, and I'm going to pass 400 as the status request, saying that this was a bad request. When you return something from an API in Python, at least in Flask, you can say JSONify. That's just going to take a Python object and convert it into JSON code. And then you can pass the status code. In this case, it's an HTTP status code of 400, which stands for bad request, meaning that the user made a mistake when they called this by not passing, in this case, the call ID. Okay, now next, we're going to do the following. We're going to say try response is equal to fetch call details with the call ID. So the idea is, okay, they give us the call ID. Now we go and we hit that endpoint and we get the information. Now that we have that, we can print out the response just to see what it looks like. And then we can say summary is equal to response.get, and we can get the summary, and we can say the analysis is equal to response.get, and we can get the analysis. And then we can say return JSONify, and we can pass that information. So we can say analysis is the analysis, and then we can say the summary is the summary, and we need to spell that correctly, and then we can return 200 as the status code because this means it was successful. Otherwise, we can say accept exception as E, and then we can just return same thing. Okay, return this. We'll do 500, which stands for internal server error, meaning an error occurred, and we will return the string of E from our API endpoint. Okay, that's it. We just need to start the server now. So we're going to say if underscore underscore name is equal to underscore underscore main underscore underscore. Okay, and then we're going to say app.run, and then debug is equal to true. Okay, I know I wrote a lot of code there, but essentially what this is going to do now is set up a very simple backend Python server that has the ability to hit this endpoint. This will give us information, essentially the logs of a call. The information we care about from a call is the summary and the analysis. So we will then take that information and give that back to our front end. Now we need to run the server, so we can simply say Python and then main.py. So now our server is running. So what I would be able to do if I copy this URL, that's where it's running, is I could just go to my web browser. I could paste this in. I could go /get underscore call underscore details. I forget what we called it. Call details. So /call dash details. I could say call underscore ID is equal to like 124 or something, and then press enter. And then when I do this, you're going to see that it returns back to me the response from my server. Let me zoom it in. Analysis null, summary null. The reason why we don't get anything is because the call ID we passed isn't valid, but you can see that this is us essentially testing the endpoint. If I didn't pass a call ID, you can see it gives us an error. It says the call ID is required. So now the idea is we want the front end to use this after the call has finished. So let's set that up. So we're going to go to our front end. So let's close this. We don't need to do anything with the back end now as long as it's running. And we're going to go to this vite.config.js file. Now inside of here, we need to set up something known as a proxy. So again, we avoid a very common error. It's called CORS, cross-origin resource sharing, so that we're able to send a request from our front end to our back end. So just bear with me here, but this is how we're going to do this. We're going to write something called server inside of this define config after our plugins. Inside of the server, we're going to specify a proxy. And inside of the proxy, we're going to do /call dash details. Okay, and then we're going to do the following. We're going to say target is equal to https://localhost:5000, which is the URL of our server. We're then going to say change origin is equal to true, which means we want to change the origin on where we're sending this request. So rather than sending it to our front-end server, we send it to our back-end server. We're then going to say secure is equal to false so that we don't get any errors. Okay, this is something we're doing in development mode. In production, you would want to change this slightly, but the point is that we're going to proxy any request from this URL to now go to this target, which is where our backend API is running, so that we'll be able to fetch those details. Now what we can do is we can go to app.jsx and we can write a simple function that can query the information from our backend. So from app.jsx, we're going to write the following function, and we're going to say get call details. Okay. For this, we're going to say the interval is equal to 3000, which is 3 seconds. And what this is going to do is it's going to poll our endpoint. Now, polling just means you keep calling it until you get a response that you're looking for. The idea is that after the call finishes, it's going to take a few seconds. I was going to say minutes, but it won't be minutes. It will just be a few seconds for the analysis to be completed, because that requires an LLM to analyze the transcript of the call. Once the transcript has been analyzed, then we can get the data that we need. So what I'm going to do is keep essentially hitting that API endpoint until the analysis is finished, and then I can get that information. Now, there's another way to do this, which is to set up something called a webhook. I don't want to show that to you this second, but you can also set an endpoint on your server, and then you can have Voppy just hit that API endpoint and send the details to it once that's been completed, so that you avoid this polling process. But for now, I just want to keep it simple. So I'm going to say here, set loading result is equal to true. Okay, so we're getting the call details. So first thing we do is we'll say, okay, we're loading. We're going to say fetch, and we're going to fetch /call-details. Okay, and then question mark call underscore ID is equal to plus the call ID, which is specified in our state. Okay, scroll back down. Now we're going to say dot then, and we're going to say response, and we're going to say response dot JSON. Okay, we're then going to say dot then, and we're going to have data. This is a function, and let me format this so you guys can read it. Now, the data is going to be all of our data once it's been parsed as JSON, and we're going to say the following. We're going to say if data.analysis and data.summary. So if we have both of those pieces of information, then what we can do is we can log this out. So we can say console.log, and then we can log all of our data, and then we can set the call result, which will just be equal to the data, and we can say set loading result equal to false. Okay, now otherwise, if we don't have this information, it doesn't mean that the endpoint failed. It just means that information's not ready yet. So if we don't, we're going to do something called set timeout, and we're going to say set timeout, and we're just going to call this get call details function again recursively at whatever the interval is that we specified at this interval. So pretty much we're saying, okay, if the data is not ready, then set a timeout. So wait for this interval, which will be 3000 or 3000 milliseconds, so 3 seconds, and then call this function again and see if the data is ready again 3 seconds later. If you wanted it to update faster, then you can make the interval shorter. And then lastly, if there's any errors, we can catch those if we want. So we can say catch error like this, and then we can do something like, what should we do? Maybe just alert the error. Okay. So that is the get call details function. And we want to call the get call details function when we stop the voice assistant. So we're going to go here and we're going to say get call details after we press this stop button. Now that should be it. But the last thing we'll want to do is display the call details. This will be very straightforward. We're just going to go above the loading indicator. And we're going to do the following. We're going to say loading result. And we're just going to add a paragraph tag, and we're just going to say loading call details. Okay, please wait. Then we're going to do another one here, and we're going to say if we are not loading the result and we have a call result set, then what we're going to do is in a div, we're going to display that result. So for the div, we're going to say class name is equal to call dash result. We're then going to have a paragraph tag. Let me just format this. In the paragraph tag, we're going to have qualified, and then what we're going to display is call result dot analysis, okay, dot structured data dot is underscore qualified. Okay, so that's how you get one of those individual fields. And then we can copy this and we can say, actually, I don't need to put a header. I'm just going to say call result dot summary, and we can display what that summary is. Okay, so that should be it. Sorry, I know that was a lot of code there, guys. Again, you can get this all from GitHub. Let's give this a shot though. So let's make sure that our front end and our back end are both running. They are. Let's open up our browser and let's refresh and go through this process again. Okay, start call. Okay, so it's loading, and this time I'm just going to go through it. I'll do it really quickly so we can get the result.
Hey Timothy, I'm calling from Dev Launch. You requested a call to start the application process. Are you ready to start?
Yes, I'm ready to start. I'm just going to give you all the details to speed it up. My name is Tim. I'm 24 years old. I live in Canada. I make a lot of money. I'm ready to invest in the program. I'm ready to get started right away, and I'm a very experienced programmer. How do we move forward?
Hey Tim, thanks for sharing all that information. It sounds like you're in a great position to benefit from the Dev Launch private mentorship program. The next step is to set up a call where we'll go over the details and answer any questions you might have. You'll see the web page update with the next steps. Excited to move forward? Do you have any questions or anything else you'd like to discuss in the meantime?
Okay, sweet. So I'm just going to end the call now, and you'll see, it gave me an issue. It said, failed to execute JSON on response, unexpected end of JSON input. Okay, that's weird. But the point is that it kind of brought us to this next stage. So let's fix this error really quickly and then see what that problem is. So if we go back to VS Code here, said something about the JSON. So what is that? All right, so very silly mistake there, but I accidentally put HTTPS instead of HTTP. This is not secure, so I need to remove the S, and that's why I just got this HTTP error thing, or this proxy error thing popping up here. So let me try this one more time. I'll fast forward through the assistant just so that we can make sure that it's working.
Timothy, I'm calling from Dev Launch. You requested a call to start the application process. Are you ready to start?
Yes, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Tim. I'm 24 years old. I live in Canada. I make lots of money. I'm an experienced programmer. I'm ready to invest, and I'm ready to get started right away. What's the next step?
Awesome, Tim. Based on what you've shared, it sounds like you could be a great fit for the Dev Launch private mentorship program. The next step is to set up a call where we'll go over the details and answer any questions you have. You'll see the webpage update with the next steps. Excited to move forward? Do you have any questions?
So I just ended the call. We're not getting that error this time, so it's just polling the endpoint and waiting for the data. All right, so I just finished the call, and you can see that now we're getting this information. The qualified thing's not showing up properly, which I'll fix in 1 second, but you can see it's giving me the summary, it gives me the information, and if I were to go inspect here and go to console, we have this object that contains the analysis and the summary, and we can view all of the structured data and the contact details and all of this kind of stuff, right? So there you go. This is working pretty much, and we have all of this data. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Now, what I want to do is just fix this qualified input. So in order to do that, I'm just going to go to app.jsx. I'm going to go to where I'm showing qualified, and I just need to go .toString because this is going to be a Boolean. So if we convert this to string now and go back here, you can see that it does show that I am qualified. Sorry for the abrupt cut, but I was just editing the video and I realized that the voice really doesn't sound that natural, and I went ahead and made a few changes here that I want to show you to make this just sound a lot better. Now, the reason it doesn't sound natural is just because of the voice that we chose. So I just picked kind of a random one that has a weird accent from 11 Labs, but if we make a few small tweaks here to the model or to the voice, it's going to sound a lot better, and I'm sure you guys already played around with that, but I just want to show you a voice that I found that works really well. So if we stay with 11 Labs here as our provider, first things first, I'm going to change the model just to go to 11, and then this will be Turbo V2. I found that this one works a little bit better, so I'm going to click on that. Next, I'm going to go to voice, and actually where it says add voice ID manually, I'm going to check that box, and I'm going to paste in this voice ID right here. Now I'll leave this in the description. It'll just be labeled voice ID in case you want to copy it yourself, but it sounds a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this now, and we can go back to our demo, and I want to show you what a difference this makes and how much better it sounds.
Hey, Timothy, I'm calling from Dev Launch. You requested a call to start the application process. Are you ready to start?
Yes, let's go ahead and get started.
Great. I'm here to help you see if the DevLaunch Private Mentorship Program is a good fit for you. This will just take a few minutes, and at the end, I'll let you know the next steps. Sound good?
Yep, all good.
Awesome. To get started, can I ask how old you are?
Yes, I'm 24.
Got it, 24. And which country are you currently living in?
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end the call there, but you can see that this sounds so much better. So just a small tweak there can really improve this and just make it sound a lot more natural. Now we can continue messing around with this and you can check all of the responses and everything that's going on, but I think that's pretty much going to wrap up this video because, well, that's completed this project and we've now made a voice assistant, integrated into the front end, added it to a backend server, and in just 90 minutes I showed you quite a lot of stuff that can really take you quite far into building something professional that you can use for your own project or your own use case. Obviously you can set this up with other automation systems. There's so many more things you can do that I just can't cover in this short video. And if you guys want to see more videos on this topic, definitely let me know because I'm sure Vapi will team up with me again so we can do another cool video and I can show you guys maybe some more advanced use cases or maybe some just other components that it has. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up. Again, all of this code will be available from the link in the description. I hope you enjoyed and I look forward to seeing you in another YouTube video.